Hello, everyone. My name is Roz Kalb, and I'm a clinical psychologist in Maine. And I'm also a senior programs consultant with Can Do Multiple Sclerosis. I'm really excited to be here today with Deborah Miller and Myra and Steve to talk about some major transitions and what happens in a family when they need to begin to think about major transitions that might happen in their lives in the future. I really appreciate Steve and Myra coming back and joining us again for this topic.
My name is Deb Miller. I'm a clinical social worker at the Cleveland Clinic Mellon Center, and I also have research interests in the impact of family caregiving on people living with MS. I've worked in MS for about 35 years, and I'm a member of the consultant group who works with Can Do MS. I'm really honored to be here.
I'm Myra Lazanik, and we live in Omaha, Nebraska, and I was diagnosed with MS in 1982. So I've had it, or been dealing with it for 38 years, I guess. I'm a retired teacher. I retired about 10 years ago from elementary teaching, and we're just trying to live the dream now.
And I'm Steve Lazanik, Myra's husband and support partner. I'm also retired for about 2.5 years now from manufacturing management positions. And again, living with Myra and making this all work.
Your MS has gradually progressed over the years. You and Steve have worked together to manage those changes and transitions. And you've had to adapt some strategies and use different kinds of tools to meet your needs. What I want to ask you about today is what might happen if your MS symptoms progress to the point where the strategies and tools you currently use just wouldn't do it for you anymore, or if Steve could no longer provide the kinds of daily help that he does.
Well, we have talked a little about it, not in depth, but it is, I think, in the back of our minds always, wondering, because I have had a slow progression over the last 15 years. The first 20 were, pretty mild, but now because of the progression, you don't know when you're going to ever stop progressing. And so will it be that I won't be able to stay in the home? We did move to a new home 9 years ago, actually, just almost to the day. And part of that reason is because it's a ranch that I don't have to go up and down stairs every day if I don't need to, where our old house was a split entry, and there's just no way I could be doing that now. And I would love to be able to stay here forever, but I know that's not a possibility. And at some point we're going to want to downsize to a smaller place, maybe a villa or something where you don't have yard work, where, it would be a much smaller facility where you would live. Maybe, you might have a partner next door to you, like a duplex type of thing, where you would still have neighbors, but you would still have a home.
Steve, what concerns you the most about the possibility of changes in the future?
There are always trials and tribulations. Every day, we don't know what we're going to be faced with. It's kind of like a draw of a card. We don't know which card's coming today. And so we have to face that. So what the future, at least kind of in my mind, it's a big box. And we've lifted that lid back and we look in and we see assisted living, or as Myra said, downsizing to a villa where the property is taken care of and things like that. So the concerns and thoughts we have looking in this box with all these items swirling around is, will we make a decision at the proper time? Will we recognize that we have to make a decision and be prepared to make that decision and be on the same page that we need this level of support or this level of support? Because if Myra believes we need this much and I'm saying, no, we only need this much, we're going to be butting heads and never happy with where we end up at. So the goal would be to be on the same page and get to that position where we're both comfortable and able to continue to live our life the way we want to live it.
I know that you have a daughter who's an adult, and I believe she's also a social worker. Have you shared in these conversations with her?
No.
Not yet. That being said, we've already started talking about initiating those conversations. She's coming home here in November, and we're going to start those conversations because we think it's time. She's mentioned she's noticed we're getting older. I don't want to say it's saddened her or really concerned her, but she's noticing the changes that we're going through.
If things got to the point where you really couldn't manage here, or something happened to Steve's health or yours, what options might you, Myra, be willing to consider in terms of other types of living beyond the villa that you just mentioned?
Well, actually, the first course of action for me personally, I think, would be to try to get some assistance in the home if I was at the level where I could still maybe cook and do those things. If not, the next step would be then to move into a retirement center, I think, that had assisted living attached to it, so that if I didn't necessarily need complete assistance all day long, I could go to that and then at some point move over into assisted living. I may need to go directly to assisted living. Those thoughts do go through my head. I mean, I do worry about what would happen if I didn't have Steve, because he does do a multitude of things every single day. We haven't acted on it too much yet, but you know, that's kind of the way my mind works. I have to sort of let things marinate for a while, and then I can deal with it a little bit later.
Myra, what do you see as the pros and cons of those different options that you just mentioned?
Well, staying in the home, of course, you know, you're in your own home. But the con of that is it being able to maintain it. If I had to go to like assisted living, let's just say, the idea of living in a very small, confined area bothers me a lot. I think about that a lot. I don't know. I love my space that I have here. The idea of having to kind of start all over when you're older and kind of make new friends is sort of daunting for me. I don't like that idea very much. And also just the thought that I can't now take care of myself. I've got to have this person that doesn't know me yet, you know, to help me where I'm used to Steve. Well, and never mind the cost. That's a big factor, is, you know, how much is this all going to cost?
Have the two of you had a chance to do any financial planning with some sort of accountant or other financial advisor?
Yes, we started that a long time ago. I got a long-term care plan to help support if I need to go in, which due to the MS, I was not able to get a plan. But at least my side of the equation is taken care of somewhat to help reduce our personal costs and all this.
Do you think that you would have started working with a financial planner that early in your marriage if MS had not been in the picture?
Yes. Yeah. My parents were Depression era. So they had that mindset, you know, only spend what you can afford to spend, put money away, plan. We would have been planning no matter what.
I think so.
I'm wondering, Steve, of the options that Myra just discussed in terms about where she would receive her care and how she would receive it, what are your thoughts about the options she discussed?
I'm in agreement with them. One thing she didn't mention was several years ago, we had become friends with an elderly gentleman at church. He was in his 90s and a widower, and his family lived out of town. So we became close friends. And we watched his health decline, where he ended up having to go into a assisted care facility. There are a lot of facilities being built right now because of the baby boomers moving into that. So again, we looked with him, we looked for him when he wasn't able to, you know, go out and see what options were out there. So we had a basic understanding, and I'm in full support and understanding what Myra is looking at and thinking about.
It's wonderful that you're on the same page about what plans you'd want to put in place. But if you had a different set of preferences than Myra outlined, how would you manage that as a couple?
As Myra likes to say, cost and discuss. And we'd lay out the pros and cons of each side and we would come to a mutual agreement of what would be the best options for us.
If you don't sit down and discuss it, then nothing's ever going to happen. You have to have the discussion, no matter what it is that you're talking about. It doesn't have to be anything that has to do with your health. But if you don't have that discussion, then you don't know for sure where the other person is coming from. And I know from experience, I sometimes don't express my thoughts. And so when we have a conversation, it makes us have to get those thoughts out. And that's one of the things that what's great about watching some of the things on Can Do, the webinars and the programs, is that it generates a discussion between the two of us that we might not have thought about having.
It sounds like you were wonderful friends to the elderly gentleman in your church. It also sounds like it was a benefit to you to open your eyes to all of the options and the opportunities and what to think about. If you hadn't had that experience, how do you think you would begin the process now of looking into options?
We're getting literature in the mail at the doorstep every now and then.
Ads on television.
Ads on television that have told us these places are out there, and it's piqued our interest.
We have other friends that have had to put their spouses in assisted living for at different levels of assistance. And so we've heard a little bit more about the places where they've been and that cost. And so, and like what things that do they offer. And so, we're taking all that in and kind of stockpiling that information so that when we have to make those decisions, we have a little bit more of a baseline.
If something were to happen to Steve and you needed help tomorrow, if Steve needed to go to the hospital for a surgery, what would you do to put yourselves in a place where Steve could take care of himself, recover from the surgery, know that you were safe, and for you to be in a place where you would be comfortable?
Well, I think I would talk with a doctor to start with to see what they might recommend, and they would probably put me to somebody like you, a social worker that could maybe have a broader knowledge of places that you could go to in a short term. I probably at that point would just have in-home help if I could get it, but you don't know if you can find somebody so quickly. So I probably would start with my doctors and friends if they've been through any of that. Yeah, the neighbors. So there might be people close by, friends that could come by and help too.
How would you as a social worker help them know their options in the community?
Typically, we actually recommend for folks facing the possible need for short-term immediate care. For instance, Steve, you would plan a weekend away. Before you make that planned absence, you would investigate home care agencies that other people find acceptable. And then in a kind of controlled way, we would have Myra at home having the experience of receiving care from these individuals, but you would still be readily available if anything came up that she needed to have you back in the house quickly. It's a dry run, actually. For people who have higher care needs, we do the same thing, but we have them, instead of having people come into the home, identify facilities that they're interested in and they feel comfortable with, and have the person stay for a short period of time, maybe a 3-day or a 4-day weekend, while you are still available to help step in if something does not go smooth. If you have a comfort zone or a level of comfort with an organization and that you know the name of the director of nursing or the person responsible for scheduling. It's so much easier to contact that person or that agency when the time comes up on short notice.
We, in a sense, had a dry run 3 or 4 years ago when I got together with those guys for the football game. I had a bunch of college friends that wanted to do a get-together at the university for a weekend. And I wanted to do it, but I couldn't do it. Myra had to convince me to do it, that she would be okay. And it was a bridge for me to get to being able to do a real dry run that Deborah mentions.
It seems like it's much easier to move forward the next time.
Yes.
And we fully support opportunities for spouse caregivers to have time on their own as they want.
You two really communicate in a wonderful way. And you've worked very hard on your partnership to make sure that it works for both of you. Do you think that your communication will work as well for you as you have to face some of these very difficult transitions of aging or MS progressing?
Yeah,
I think so.
I think so. We both will start the conversation or begin a conversation, but then we'll realize one of us isn't ready for it, or we're both really not ready for it. Like I said before, we kind of look in the box and now let's put the lid back on. We're just not ready about it. And we let it percolate in our minds for a while. And then down the road, then we can say, yeah, what do you think about this?
We've kind of learned that about ourselves, that, now that I'm in the more detailed oriented phase of my life, that I kind of need to know what's going to happen next if I can figure it out, or try to plan for it anyway. I have to think about it for a while. I can't always just jump right into it and say yes.
Thank you. I think as we talk about it can do all the time, it's important to plan for the worst that could happen, even while you're hoping for the best that could happen.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for being with us and being willing to talk about these difficult decisions. It's, as always, wonderful to talk to you, Myra and Steve, and you, Deb. So thank you.
It was wonderful to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.